What's up, everyone? How's it going? Welcome to today's market analysis and trade recap series. Today is May the 21st, and today we did actually take some trades. And unfortunately, we got stopped out of both our trades in which we took. But the first one, we could have taken profit, but something that I'm not proud of happened that resulted in us not taking profit. That would have resulted us in a nice 1 to 2, 1 to 3 risk to reward, which would have put us up pretty decent on the day. But let's get straight into this. And let's talk about how today was quite an unfortunate day. But overall, not bad because our analysis was very correct, or our overall bias was pretty correct. So let me outline the overall structure and basis for the market prior to market open, right? Let's go on to the 1 hour to do that on ES. What we saw happening was that price has been essentially continuing this uptrend. Then we started seeing this sell-off occur. We essentially came into this 30-minute zone and we started seeing buy actions start to occur. Now, we identified that this buy action had started to occur, and we saw that market opened with these higher high. So our bias was actually bullish on the day until some levels were taken here on some liquid levels were taken essentially. And that is essentially what happened, right? We came up for the majority of the day, took out this level, almost took out this level, and we saw a major dump down. And this dump down is due to news, I believe, but let me just double check. So as you can see, Trump and the South African president were speaking alongside the fact that we did have news release as well. We did have these flash manufacturing. We did have this FOMC speaking that did occur. And we had the 20-year bond auction that all resulted in the move that happened, but nobody expected a move this big to happen. That's why good thing that we stay within our morning AM session. That's pretty much the structure for ES. Let's take a look on NQ as well. NQ was essentially the same, right? But one difference was on the higher side of NQ, we leveled out at the zone right here, and we identified that this zone right here is a very, very key level for price. And the area that we're at right now in the higher time frame is trying to find direction as to where we may go next. We're just consolidating on the very, very high time frame and looking where to go. Now, we came down, retraced. Now we're in a key level around that V2 area and this relative zone area on NQ, where we did see higher low, which did get played out pretty nicely with these early market open longs. So we are bullish to a certain extent until we see opposing reaction from a different level. And it's kind of interesting how the same area, the zone, was the area where we saw all this sell pressure come in. This shows that your levels may even work when there's news events, or typically you'll wait to try and take out liquidity, as we took out this liquidity up here at those highs. We basically took this liquidity on Bookmap. We likely tapped into that liquidity where we were in that zone where all those passive sellers were, resulted in the big dump down. So what I want to do today is to go over the two trades that we did take and also analyze the high action and actually see what happened that caused this major move here today. Let's dive straight into this. So the first trade, as we already mentioned, we're already long biased because of the structure and the fact that we want to take higher liquidity. Now, we are waiting a retracement to find decent value for an entry model for us to enter. Now, first retracement we saw was right here. What essentially happened at the area was, let's go and check. Shout out to Alex with Think Good Bookmap. Check out his channel. Highly recommend it. It's a great resource for many traders. Yeah, so this was the first retracement that we saw. Now you may be wondering what exactly pushed me to enter long here, right? Well, look at price. Price went up to this 5935 level, started seeing some rejection from it. This level started to hold once again, but we see that a barrier is being created that is supporting the long side. We start to see heavy sellers, and the heavy sellers come in volume, and then price start to push up. That is showing to me that there might be potential seller absorption here at that level, and that we can likely head to these 5940 levels because that works along with the value area, and also this is the highest target with the most significance, so we are going ahead and targeting such. And if you look at what happens, exactly what we predicted to happen occurs. But let's take a look at the footprint as well before that. This was where we saw that absorption on Bookmap. We see a heavy amount of selling delta come in down at those Bookmap barrier levels. And what that heavy seller delta is indicating to me is that sellers have been coming into the market, but unfortunately, they have not been able to break through this 5927 area. And since buyers have started to come in and sellers were not able to hold this price and break through, I believe that we can take out those levels above because all these sellers that have gotten in can get stopped out, which helps push the price upwards. And if you look at that, that's exactly what happened. First trade was a spot on and a bang. Went straight to our level, but you might be wondering, why was this an L trade? Well, unfortunately, we did not have our take profit set, and this move happened because of a sudden news alert, which pushed price all the way there, which was to our favor, but it likely would have happened anyway. But because of that move up, look what happened to the spread of liquidity on Bookmap. Essentially, all of it was taken out after that big move up, leaving us essentially dumbfounded without knowing what to do. Now, we decided to hold this trade because 5945 did continue to hold liquidity, likely because it did not get swept. But we decided to hold that level and hold to our plan, hoping that we would come back to those 5940 levels because we were generating liquidity again. And here we saw that we're coming into this barrier. At that barrier around 917, we did start to see a tad bit of seller delta like before. And we did start to come up, but what we saw was that a seller barrier occurred, and we were not able to break the seller barrier, and sellers started to come in. That is a sign of invalidation, resulting in us to exit the trade, which is quite unfortunate, but it is part of the game. Now, potential way to minimize this loss was to be happy and just exited when that move happened because that was on our behalf. And we would have likely taken a 1 to 1.5 risk reward, which is honestly not bad at all, and definitely something that would have been a better option than to get stopped. We got stopped because the seller barriers were showing more strength and buyers were unable to break through this level. Now, first trade, in my opinion, is a decent trade. It's just the fact that we did not place our take profit, which if we have, it would have provided us with a nice trade, which unfortunately was not the case. Now, the second time, we were still on the long bias with these longs, but, and a reason for that was because the targets above are still holding with significance. These levels, even after being tapped into multiple times, are continuing to hold within the market. It shows that these are key levels with the market waiting for a reaction. Now, if you look at the lower side, there's not really anything significant until 5,900, which is a psychological level and it's pretty far away. So I'm not expecting it to head all the way down there quite yet. I'm expecting a further move up until we take out further liquidity or head back up again. Now, what we noticed in this trade was that we entered into our 15-minute fair value gap and also into our V2 levels. That itself shows that we're in a great value for retracement. But let's go ahead and see what exactly happened at that point. And what we saw was that we had this buying supporting barrier. And we did have the seller support barrier. But one thing that highlighted the buys may come in was that we started putting in big seller numbers here and buyers started coming in with strength. You can clearly notice that absorption here on the footprint chart. Just look at how much selling absorption that we're getting here at the bottom, which resulted in us taking. Also, one thing I want to highlight is the reason we hold and it didn't push up can also be highlighted by this high volume area right here. When that price made that big move that would have made us take profit, when it started to come down again, this zone was an area where buyers and sellers were fighting very hard to find direction in the market. This is an area where we expect to see a reaction off of and make high volume in. So this is where I'm looking for action within the market, and it looks like here, although buyers did come in, passive sellers were stronger. That resulted in an eventual move towards the downside, which would have reversed to the upside if this trade would have played out. And unfortunately, this trade did not play out, although we did see absorption. We did happen to get wicked out like such, which resulted in us getting up. I think the reason for this trade failing was because we were tied with the idea that we're in V2 and also the 15-minute fair value gap, and we kept our stop too tight, focusing on this barrier in itself, when realistically we should have waited for clear signs of absorption before even entering, because although you may consider this as absorption, that is okay to consider as absorption, but one thing that's not good about this is because this is the 930 candle. Look where that was coming in. That was coming in here, and is there even a barrier there that demonstrates absorption? Not really. I'm not seeing any true passive buyers within the market that are actually holding these sellers up at that point in itself. Now, if we spotted absorption here, that would have been a different case. But if you look at this candle, no absorption near the bottom at all. Moving forward, we took out this liquidity, but then we made a reaction off of it, came back down here. And we came back down there with a pretty good amount of strength. Look at all of this selling delta here. This is a very strong selling candle. Next, what we saw was that price pushed down one more time, took out those lows, and then continued to just skyrocket towards the upside. Honestly, this trade should have been avoided because there was no proper absorption on footprint that would have demonstrated any confirmation for us to enter. It was simply a good area that we were tied and buried with that resulted in us getting wicked out. Although the idea that we're in a good value causing a retrace, causing a move up was correct, the area of entry was not, because we did not wait for enough confirmation and we were married to that bias of that fair value. A better trade would be right here. Once we came down to this level, we took out all this liquidity on Bookmap. Now we came up, broke through this barrier. Now look what happens next. We see this buyer support barrier show up. And we also see the seller support barrier show up. Now what I'm looking for here is to see which side has strong absorption, because typically whichever side has strong absorption will head towards the other side. And if the other side can break, we should be able to head towards the long side at least till 5940. And let's take a look at what happened. We broke through these highs pretty easily, right? With strength too. And honestly, I'm not spotting much absorption here. If we spotted large amounts of seller delta near the bottom of this candle right here, then that would have been a great long entry. But unfortunately, there was nothing of that sort, which shows us that although big moves happen in the market, you cannot catch them all, and some of them just happen. Your role as a trader is to find those opportunities that align with your strategy that allows you to make profitable trades. You don't need to, and you actually don't even want to catch the biggest of moves. You want to catch the moves that have a high probability of you actually succeeding with it. And with this move, there was no confirmation, so there was no way for us to enter, even though there was this barrier, because we do want to see some sort of confirmation here on Bookmap. And if we consider all this buying delta as confirmation, then potentially we could have entered, because all this distributed buying delta does not show absorption, because that buying delta is happening near the bottom as well, not just near the top, indicating that buying is spread throughout and it's not just passive buying. Could have been interpreted that way, which would have allowed us to get in, but it all depends on the user's interpretation. But that's honestly it for recapping those two trades. Let's go ahead and see what happened here at these highs, right around 11:45. Okay, what seems to have happened was we came up to this very key level around 5955. Here, we had large amount of buyers come in near the top, right around this passive selling. So what I'm expecting to see was that there was large amounts of buyer absorption here at these highs. And along with the buyer absorption, sellers came through with strength, resulting in price to head all the way down. But no trade that we would have got with that. We could have just understood that that was a likely occurrence with the footprint chart. And if you look at that, that is such a clear sign of absorption right there. Just take a look at that. Where is most of the volume in this candle? It's near the top. And now, what happened near the top regarding delta? We see large amounts of buyer delta, even buyer imbalances within this candle. Large amounts of buyer delta near the top. But it shows that buyers are trying to push through this area with a large amount of strength. Now, in the next candle, what we see happening, a large amount of sellers start to come in with increasing volume and power, right? This shows me that we might see a reversal at this area, and that was likely the occurrence for such a big down move, because as we went down, all these buyers that got in near the top around there would have gotten stopped out, resulting in the ultimate move down, which is all of this right here. So that's that. That's pretty much going to be it for today's market analysis or trade recap session. We talked about the overall market structure for today. We analyzed our two trades. We talked about the context for the sell move that happened. And we looked at it within the footprint charts and book map, showcasing overall order flow. Now, if you have any questions, please go ahead and join the Discord server. The link is in the description down below. Everything is completely free, and there are lots of many resources that you may potentially use and benefit from. You can also leave a comment down below. I'll be sure to answer there as well. And we're also looking to create a new series in which we will do charting analysis every single day before the next day, where we'll set up our preferable outcomes, some quick context and overview before the upcoming market, so that we are prepared for the day to come every single day. So instead of one daily video, we may even expect 2 daily videos now. So I hope you guys are excited for that. That's pretty much it here for today. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the next market analysis or trade recap session. I guess I'll see you guys then. Goodbye.